everybody. It's Maya Zahira here, and we are live on the Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. If you're watching this early on in the video, that means that you're watching the replay. And now we have some people joining us. So welcome everybody. As you join, I would like for you to please tell us where you are joining from, so city and state. Tell us where you're joining from. Anna Maria, Jeannie, Sandy, Katya, Stacy. Hi, Tana. I think this is a popular topic. I had a feeling we would have a lot of people on this class. This class is all about false light spiritual beings. Hey, Mark from Athens, Georgia. Everybody, as you're joining, we're going to do the usual thing. Tell us where you're joining from, city and state, just so you can just connect with everybody and know where everybody's joining from. Hannah is joining from Independence, Missouri. Awesome. So right behind my phone, and Katya is joining from Parkville, Missouri. Stacy from Kansas City. Right behind my phone is the window, and the window's open because it's an unseasonably mild day. But there's construction going on, but it would actually be too stuffy if the windows were closed. So I made an executive decision. So we might have a little bit of hammering and a little bit of drill sounds, but we're just going to deal with it. Helene is joining us from Kansas. Marla from Overland Park. I may have missed some people. Sorry if I missed you. I'm happy that you're here. Awesome. Tracy, welcome. Just like usual, we're going to have everybody share where you're joining from, city and state. And Nicole, welcome. Tracy's joining from Topeka, Kansas. I need to connect with you soon, Tracy. Nikki, hey Nikki, good to see you. I'm really glad that all of you joined. This is actually a really important topic, and I'm going to wait a couple minutes till we dive into the real stuff. So we're just kind of getting started, waiting for everybody to join. Mandy is joining from Junction City. Oh wow, Mandy, my way back a million years ago. I don't know if you guys can hear the drills. There's drills going on right now, but that's okay. Million years ago, when I first graduated from college, my very first school teaching job was in Junction City, Mandy. So that was a really long time ago. I was a teacher many years ago. Erica and Zahira, welcome. Go ahead and tell us where you are joining from. This is the free Facebook Live class on our Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. This class is all about false light spiritual beings and what they are and how to avoid them. We have some really juicy stuff that we're going to cover, but we always wait a couple minutes in to really get started on the core content, making sure everybody joins so you don't miss anything. And I've got my tablet here. I have a lot of notes. I want to make sure that I go through everything and don't jump all over the place and forget important things. So, okay, so let's start off with something easy and fun. If you could type in one word and share with us one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Okay, so we'll do a little bit more sharing before we get into the class content. So while I'm waiting for you all to share, and Zahira is joining from Renton, Washington. Awesome. While I'm waiting for all of you to share your one word that describes how you're doing today. Tana is calm. Nikki relieved. Wow, you guys are fast today. This is good. Zahira tired. Sandy grounded. Alexis tired. Mandy tired. Anna Maria happy. Yay. It was a fun weekend, wasn't it? Marla grateful. Cool. Katya intrigued. Yep. Anybody else? So I wanted to give us the opportunity to do a little bit of sharing right now. Stacy's feeling tired because some of my classes are more about brainstorming together, and some of my classes I'm just giving you information and you have the opportunity to ask questions, and that's more like what this class is today. Really important stuff though. So now it's your chance to participate a little bit right here at the beginning. Tracy is feeling hopeful. Wonderful. So as we are going, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to chime in, or any thoughts, whatever. Just so you know, on my end, hey Kai, welcome. Go ahead and tell us what city and state you're joining from. Welcome, Ashley. Mark is feeling calm. We're all sharing one word that describes how we're feeling right now. So share your city and state and your word. Okay, what was I going to say? As we're going, I encourage questions. And Sahela's feeling excited also. I encourage questions, comments, thoughts, but just so you know, on my end, on my device, I won't be able to see really, really long, like paragraphs if it's a really long story. So keep it to a sentence or sentence maybe, and then I'll be able to see all of it. Ashley is feeling meh. Yeah, I know how that feels. Kai is visiting. I wish you were visiting. Wow, that would be so great. Kai is joining us from Bullhead City, Arizona, and she's feeling clear. Cool. What's my word? I'm trying to think of a word that's different than nervous, because I'm not nervous. It's not as extreme as nervous. It's just, I'm a little something. I don't know what the word is. And cautious isn't the right word either, but you'll know why. I'll explain to you. Actually, energetically, our space is safe. When I share with you something that happened with me when I first started to share this information about false light, I got a lot of pushback from people. So the nervousness is, or anxiousness or whatever, just a little mild anxiousness, is because when I first started to share this information, I did get a lot of pushback from people, a couple of people, and I'll explain why that happens sometimes. So this is a big deal that I'm sharing this information right now. I've been feeling braver lately and really coming out with some of the things that I normally only save for my psychic protection masterclass students. So this is some of the, deeper, kind of more intense stuff. What I realized, and I'll share a little bit about this thing that happened when I started to share this stuff before. I'll share that a little bit later. But what I realized was that not everybody's ready for this information. Some people can get pretty charged up about it. Some people can get angry and defensive. And again, later I'll explain why they would get defensive. There's a reason for that. And so now I'm pulling back the curtain and I'm sharing with you some information that I've kept somewhat private for that reason. So, and then we have the neighbor dog. The windows are open. It's neighborhood sounds. So it's a class with Maya with the special add-on of neighborhood sounds. Bonus. Okay, I think there were a few more comments. Kai is saying she's feeling clear. She just cleaned everything. Awesome. Consternation. No, probably not consternation. Maybe it would be more like mild. I think my word would be 2 words. Mildly anxious, but only mild. I feel pretty good. I feel excited too. I feel excited. Okay, so let's jump right in. I think we've had enough chit chat. All right, so going through my notes. All right, so before we go into our content, I want to make sure that I reintroduce myself, because A lot of people have just joined, and then we'll jump right into our class. We have a lot to cover. In fact, while I'm sharing this part, if you want to grab a pen and paper, then that would be a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to reintroduce myself. My name is Maya Zahira, and I run Psychic Protection Sanctuary. It's the name of my business, and it's also the name of the public Facebook group where I share a lot of resources. So that's where this Facebook Live is taking place, is on the Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And it's a resource for people who are, it's a resource and support and so many things for people who are having trouble with managing the energies around them. And there's like a whole spectrum. So I have people who are just dealing with issues with managing just plain old negative energies, with family and work and all of that, all the way to the other end of the spectrum with people having experiences with unwanted paranormal experiences, and they're trying to figure out how to clear those. So I help people with that whole spectrum. And so just real quick, my website is www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. That's psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And on there, I wanted to make sure to let you know where you can connect with me further. So you can actually connect with the Facebook group from my website if you want to. If you're watching this somewhere else, if you want to find the Facebook group, you can go to my website, and it's on the very top. And I also have a Psychic Protection Monthly Masterclass for people who want more of this kind of stuff that we're covering in this video, okay? It's a monthly ongoing class. And then for people who are dealing with really serious psychic attacks, unwanted paranormal activity, entity issues, and that sort of thing, I have a special downloadable kit that you can purchase. It's like, I forget, 8 hours or something of videos, audios, handouts, everything that you need to know to clear what's going on. And that comes from firsthand experience. So that's the Psychic Protection Emergency Kit, and all of that can be found on my website. Okay, all done with all that part. Now for the juicy stuff. This class is all about false light spiritual beings, what they are, how to avoid them, and so on. So let's do a little bit of brainstorming. What do you think false light means? So I'm going to get you thinking first before I talk and talk and talk. So go ahead and share. What do you think false light? What do you think false light? What is that talking about? Go ahead and share what you think. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to get you thinking here. So go ahead and type what you think false light, what that is. And I will wait. And we'll imagine that the Jeopardy theme song is playing in the background as we wait. What do you think false light is? Nicole says tricksters. Yep, that's right on. What else, everybody? What do you think it is? False light. Ashley says illusory sense of experience and leadership. Okay. Not totally sure. I like illusion. That's right. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the rest of it. Feel free to explain a little bit more. Zahira says negative spirits impersonating true light beings. Bingo. That's it. You've been hanging around with, you've been listening to my stuff for a while, so you've got it. Got it. Mark says disingenuous beings. Yep, same thing. It's another way of putting it. Sandy says misrepresentation of intent. Yeah, that's it too. So if someone or something is misrepresenting what their actual intent is. Helene says false evidence appearing real. Maybe. I have to think about that one. Marla says masquerading shadow either within ourselves or external beings. Yep. Okay, Ashley says, I feel many people who would fall under false light just have an inflated sense of abilities rather than out to trick people. Okay, yeah. Now, thanks for explaining that. So you're referring to individuals who are projecting that they have a lot of light, but it's more just an inflated sense of abilities. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Mandy says people who try to appear or feel enlightened but are serving their own egos rather than being open. Yes, that too. Okay, wait just a moment and see if anything else comes through. All right. Okay. Good brainstorming. So what you all did was you brought to mind for me to clarify that what we are talking about in this class, this particular class, is about false light spiritual beings. So there are actually people out there who try to project false light, like false spiritual teachers, fake gurus, ones who are not genuine, and that's actually that's a problem. But we're actually not going to be talking about people tonight. We're going to be focusing specifically on spiritual light beings that are imposters, so false light spiritual beings. And that'll be plenty for our time. We'll have plenty to talk about. And Katya says, mirror light beings and disrupt the work of healers. Yeah, it is very disruptive to the work of many healers. That's very true. Okay, so as we're going, definitely feel free to ask me questions. And now for part of this, I want to just explain that this is the terminology that I use. And you might have encountered other terminology for the same thing. And so just recognize that you may have heard some about this before. Another person may have called it something different, or you may call it something different. And so we're going to recognize that, just we don't need to be so attached to the terminology. And I think by the end you'll understand the spiritual issue that we're talking about. Okay, so we just brainstormed, and now I'm going to go ahead and give my definition of false light spiritual beings. Now the other term that I use for false light spiritual beings is imposter energies or imposter entities. Helene says, would that be like a spirit who I may think is a spiritual guide, but is not actually from the light? That is exactly what we're talking about, Helene. So I'm going to read that again. Would that be like a spirit who I may think is a spiritual guide, but is not actually from the light? Yes, that's exactly what we're talking about in this class. So false light entities, false light spiritual beings, imposter entities, imposter energies, we're talking about the same thing. What we're talking about is a spiritual being, a spirit, any kind of spiritual entity that is pretending to be of the light, and it's not of the light. It's actually either some kind of trickster, shapeshifter, dark entity. It does not have a positive intent. Okay. Let's see here. There's actually a long history. Hey Sherry, so glad you joined us. There's actually a long history. This is not something recent about dark beings pretending to be light beings. If you read any history about about holy people and saints throughout history. There are many, many stories of them. Gosh, just like so many. I don't even have one or two because there's just like a whole list. I have books about it, about saints and holy people who would have beings appear to them that would appear as angels, and these different holy people would figure out, ooh, you're not actually what you appear to be, and then it would show that it was a demon. So there's, I was raised Catholic, and there's a lot of stories in the Catholic tradition of demonic entities disguising as angels and other beings of light. Okay, but it doesn't just take place in the Catholic tradition, but throughout. So religion really doesn't matter. Okay, so and then our terminology: false light, spiritual beings, imposter entities, etc. There's some other terminology that I also use, and that is the false light matrix, or the imposter matrix. And what this is, just imagine not just one dark entity that is trying to pretend to be of the light, but imagine there's a whole network of all of these dark entities that are pretending to be of the light, and there's a whole matrix of it. Okay, and I'll refer to that terminology again in just a few minutes about the imposter matrix. Okay, so what's the big problem with these false light spiritual beings? What's the obviously, it's not good if you're thinking that you're seeing, a deceased loved one or an angel, and it's a dark entity. That's not good in and of itself. But there's another major problem, and it is that once people end up getting sucked in or plugged into this false light matrix, it's really hard for them to see the truth about what's really going on, because they are being energetically manipulated. I'm going to repeat that again. Now, some of this might actually kind of like go over your head the first time, because there's so much around what I'm talking about that I haven't had a chance to share with you. So I'm giving you like a slice. Okay, so just like stick with it if something doesn't make sense right away. So I'm going to read that again. So the problem is, one of the main problems is that once people are plugged into the false light matrix, it's really hard for them to see the truth, because they are being energetically manipulated. Okay, so imagine that somebody starts channeling ascended masters. They're really into channeling, and so they're doing all this channeling work, and they don't know about false light beings. Okay, thanks, Helene. I'm glad I'm making sense. And they don't know about false light beings, and they just assume that, oh, it looks like it's pretty and it feels good and it seems like it's of the light, and so they get sucked in, and then they're never able to see the truth. What I've noticed is that when I've tried to talk with people, and I'm not the energy, I say this all the time, I'm not the energy police. I don't feel like I need to go around like correcting people and telling everybody what's what. The main way that I spread the word is through classes like this for people who are willing to hear. But occasionally, if there's a friend or someone in my closer circle who's really getting involved in a lot of false light, I will sometimes decide to talk with them. And what I've noticed over and over and over again is that they cannot see it, because they're being manipulated, and their experience is being manipulated, their vision is being manipulated, their understanding of things is being manipulated, because they're hooked into the matrix. I think the word matrix is exactly the right word. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, it's like all creepy how everybody's plugged in. This is different than the movie, but that's how it works, is everybody's being brainwashed and fed this false information by false light entities. So that's why I'm here sharing this with all of you, is because, um, it's likely that you're either not hooked into the false light matrix at all, or your involvement in it is just, not very deep. And so this is going to give you the knowledge and the know-how to identify, because the people who are really, really entrenched into the false light matrix, and they're working with what they think are all of these wonderful light beings, the truth is they end up not being energetically attracted to coming to my group or even coming to this class, because the false light beings direct them elsewhere, away from me. Okay, and so if you're watching this, then that's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Nicole says, are they hooked in because they have a demonic negative attachment? Like, is the person hooked into the matrix because they have a demonic attachment? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, not necessarily. So I'll explain that in a little bit. Okay. Okay, we have so much to cover. So let me look at my notes here. All right. We have a lot to go over, but we're going to take just like a little breather, and let's do a little bit of sharing before I go and share my story. And then I'm going to share a little tidbit of my story, and also how to identify false light beings, and also what some of the issues are with them, some of the problems that they can cause, how to identify them, how to avoid them. Before we get into all of that, let's do a little bit of story sharing. And remember, keep it to one sentence, keep it mini story, because if it's really long, it'll cut off. I won't be able to read the whole comment. So, looking back on your life, are you wondering if, or do you know if you have ever had an experience with a false light spirit, a false light entity of any kind? Okay, and go ahead and share. If there's any time that you had some kind of a spiritual experience, not like if they appeared as something dark and you knew they were dark, that's not a false light experience. This would be something that, like, it appears as one of your deceased family members, or as an angel, or as an ascended master, and you realized, like, this, like, hair on the back of your neck stood up and you got chills, and you realized that something wasn't right, and that it wasn't what it was presenting itself to be. Has anyone had any experience like that? Okay. And Helene is saying, I remember reading about this in books written by Lynn Graborn. Interesting. So I will have to get a hold of her books. The information that I'm sharing with all of you is based on firsthand experience, firsthand observation. So I actually had experiences with this, and I can see energy, I can see false light now because of the experience that I had. But I'm always interested in knowing what other people are teaching and writing about on this topic. I don't know that there are very many books about this, and so I'll be interested in looking up that author. Tana is saying, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's reasonable. Ashley is saying, a former friend would channel as an ascended master, and that would only berate me. Oh, okay. Let's use this as an example, if you don't mind, Ashley. So the former friend would channel an ascended master. That means that she would be receiving messages, or he or she, the friend, would be receiving messages and speaking those messages. That's, in case anyone doesn't know what channel means. Would be receiving these messages and speaking them to Ashley, and would berate her. So that's a sign that it's a false light being. Any spiritual being that says that it's of the light, who's going to, like, put you down, berate you, it's not true light. It's false light. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Nikki says, a couple of years after my fiance died, a spirit came to me pretending to be him. Nikki, I'm very sorry for your loss. Nikki, I haven't seen all your comments. but have you shared with us, um, I just lost my thought. Have you shared with us how did you know that it wasn't him? Because there are a lot of times when our loved ones do actually visit us. And I definitely don't want to make everyone afraid if you have a loved one visit you. A lot of times it is actually them. And so I'll be teaching you a little bit about developing your discernment with that. So what was it that alerted you that it wasn't actually him? Nikki says that was years ago. Nicole says, one appeared as my deceased dad in a dream. Do they always change faces or bodies? They don't always change faces or bodies, but some entities can be shapeshifters. And again, I'd be interested, Nicole, because loved ones do often visit us. Truly, they do visit us through our dreams and during our waking time. So what was it that alerted you that there was something not right, that it wasn't who it said that it was? Okay. We're going to be learning a little bit about discernment here on this class. Zahira says, I thought the energy flowing into me could be mother again, but I felt it negative after it stopped. Okay, so Zahira, what alerted you was that something felt negative about the energy, and so that's definitely a red flag. If you have a loved one that visits you, and we've been talking a lot about loved ones, but there's a lot of people who there's experiences with angels, ascended masters, any kind of spiritual beings can be imposters or can be pretending to be loved ones, angels, ascended beings, etc. But Zahira, your red flag was that the energy felt negative. You could feel afterwards it didn't feel good. So definitely, anytime you have a spiritual experience, if it feels bad during or after, that's a red flag. That's a sign. Okay? That's one of the signs, but I'm going to talk about more here in a little bit. Helene says, I am not trying to discount your experiences. I wanted to affirm what you are sharing. Yes, indeed. Of course. Of course. Yeah. Okay. Anna Maria says, yes, I followed one for a while in my 20s. Okay, interesting. So are you Anna Maria, are you talking about a physical spiritual teacher who was a false, working with false light? In other words, they were not authentic? Or are you saying that you followed a false spiritual being in your 20s? I'm curious, because it could be either way. It's not clear in your comment. Katya says, I think so. Around the time a friend was leading me into something he was doing for his benefit. Okay. Yeah, sometimes our friends are really excited about a class or some kind of spiritual activity, and they think it's wonderful, and they invite us. I don't know if this is what your situation was, but I'm just kind of going in my own direction with it. And they invite us to it, and we show up to it, and we're like, this doesn't feel right, but it feels great to them because they're just not able to see what you're able to see or sense what you're able to sense. So definitely, everybody, listen to your own guidance system, even if some of your friends around you are saying, oh, this energy's fine. If it doesn't feel fine for you, honor that, okay? Nikki says, there were signs eventually. I started being very negative. It started being very negative and telling me to do things I knew he would never have said. Right. So this was about your loved one, right? So if a loved one appears to you, or so-called loved one appears to you, and they're saying things that you know they wouldn't say in real life, or telling you to do bad things, that's another red flag. Exactly. Nikki says, then things started happening, lights flickering, cabinet doors banging. My then husband and I did a clearing and warding of our home, and it went away. Good. Yeah, so you went ahead and did some clearing. That's excellent. And thanks for splitting it up into 2 comments. I was able to read it really easy. That's good. Okay, Nicole says, unlike past, because in her past comment she talked about a loved one who appeared in a dream. Unlike past visitation dreams, it felt really negative and off. Yes, okay. So I hope you all are taking notes, like what to watch out for. And we're just organically getting into all of this. Actually, we're getting a lot more comments than I thought we would get. Unfortunately, you all have had a lot of experiences with this. So write some notes on some different things to watch out for. So Nicole is saying it felt really negative and really off. Like it's like you can't really put your finger on it exactly what's off, but something doesn't feel right. And Sharon, welcome Sharon. Anna Maria is clarifying. No, okay, got it. No, it appeared to me as an angel. This false angel enhanced my abilities, which is why I bought in. My grandmother saved me, LOL. Oh my God. Okay, so that gives me chills. Thank you, Anne Maria. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's really important. It brings tears to my eyes. Very important that you shared that, because so many people are fooled by these kinds of energies. This happens so often. Experiences like what you had, it happens so often. And it seemed like you were receiving benefits from the encounter, right? It enhanced, this false angel enhanced your abilities, which is why you bought into it. And so it can be kind of tempting, like, just, yeah, it can very much tempt you, and it can be, when, I'm getting tongue-tied because I have so much to say. Breath. When you get sucked in with a false light entity, they can be very convincing. And, what's more great than having your powers enhanced, So it'd be very hard to disengage from that. And I actually know some spiritual teachers. I never give identifying information publicly. I never do. But I know some spiritual teachers who are working with entities that are false light. And in doing so, it's actually giving the dark entities direct access to all of their clients, right? All of the spiritual teacher's clients and students, and then the spiritual teacher gets to benefit from that. Not in a good way though, but they feel that they're benefiting from it. So it's very serious, and it happens way, way too often. Welcome, Sharon. Good to see you. Okay, I'm going to take a little drink. All right. Awesome sharing, everybody. Thank you so much. And we were able to get into a lot of what I was going to cover just organically through going through all of those stories. Okay. All right. Oh, yes. I'm really glad that I have my notes, because I would have forgotten to share a lot of this. Just in a couple of sentences, I'm going to share my story, because honestly, I could take a whole hour to tell my story, and I'll save that for another time. Actually, you can read my book, Darkness Disguised as Light, when that comes out, to find out the whole story about it, because it's pretty complicated. But my firsthand experience with false light entities, or when I really became clear about it and really understood what was going on, was about 1.5 years ago. I got in touch with a local spiritual teacher in my community. I attended a couple of group classes and a couple of one-on-one sessions with this person, and I'm emphasizing again, I don't ever give identifying information. because that's just not how I roll. And also, this issue is way bigger than this person, okay? So I'm going to teach you about what this is and how to have better discernment, and then you can use your own discernment to figure out who's who and what's what in your community, because this happens in all communities, and it happens in the spirit world all over. Okay, so I connected with a spiritual teacher who is a lovely, lovely person. Okay, I just really liked her when I met her. And the problem was that when I connected with her, I started mysteriously experiencing psychic attack, like a generalized psychic attack. So I was sensing a lot of negative energies. I started having nightmares. I could definitely tell something was off, something was wrong. And then it got worse after I attended one of the group quote healing sessions and bought some items from this person and brought them home and hung one of the items on my bedside lamp for quote protection. And honestly, I mean, even the best of us can be fooled because you know, it was like a wolf in sheep's clothing, because the classes seemed perfectly lovely. But after I got home and hung this thing on my bedside lamp, very soon after that, there were demonic attacks that started. And now there's drills playing. I hope it's not too noisy. There's construction going on right behind my house. So there were actual demonic attacks that started occurring and that went on for a few weeks. I'm not going to go into details about what all happened with that, but you can read my book on that. And then it continued to get worse and worse and worse until I finally figured out. It's like my eyes opened and I saw what was really going on. The thing was, I didn't want to believe it because I'm a nice person and I think that other people are nice people and I think the best of other people. And Helene says, isn't it sad that the person might not have been aware of their false connection? Right. I think it's very possible still that she doesn't know that she's working with a false entity. And again, I'm going to not get real specific here because if I was specific, it would be too identifying. But this person has been working with, oh, thank you, Nicole. Nicole says, your book is going to help a lot of people. That's my hope. You'll have to excuse me tonight, you guys. I have so many thoughts coming in that I'm trying to stay focused here. Okay. So, and I totally forgot what I was going to say. So just send me lots of love. Okay. So, oh, I know what I was going to say is that the spiritual teacher has been working with this false entity for over 20 years. Okay. That's how long, because there's a whole story that she tells about how it first appeared to her during a time when she was really hurting and vulnerable. And guess what? What I now know is that when people are really vulnerable, emotionally, when they're very emotionally vulnerable or physically vulnerable through illness, or they've been traumatized, or they're grieving, or they're deeply depressed, any of those types of situations, false light beings love to come in and pretend to be an angel or some comforting being. And then you accept them, you say yes, because you're really hurting. This really, I have to tell you, this really, really upset me when I really understood this, when I came to really understand this. It really made me angry. Because when people are the most vulnerable and hurting the most, when they need real angels appearing to them and real loved ones, which I have no doubt that angels and loved ones are around. But when people are in their vulnerable state, the false light entities will take advantage, and they will come in and attach to someone. And because the person is vulnerable and so much in need of help and support, then they'll say yes, and not having any idea that that being isn't who they say they are. And that's a pretty common scenario. It's pretty upsetting, actually. So eventually, with this particular spiritual teacher, after a few weeks, I figured out what was going on. I am someone who wants to assume the best about people. So even when I started to suspect that something wasn't right, that she was actually the one causing the psychic attacks, she wasn't clearing it, she was actually causing it, the entity that was with her. I had a lot of resistance to believing that, because she seems like a really nice person, and someone nice like that wouldn't have that, right? No. So I had a lot of resistance that I had to overcome until I finally realized what was going on. And then I removed the items that I had bought from her. I disposed of those items, and as soon as I did, all of the demonic attacks stopped. There's actually a lot more to this story that confirms that it actually was coming from that person. The story gets pretty intense, actually, so you can look forward to my book. It'll be a few more months. I got a few more chapters to write. But anyway, when I got through that experience, and it was a very hard situation to get through, it was very hard to clear that psychic attack. First of all, to figure out what was going on, and second of all, to clear it. After, in the months that followed, what I noticed is that I was suddenly having this download. It felt like it was coming through my crown chakra. I was suddenly having this download of information all about psychic protection and false light and about all sorts of things relating to all of this. It was like suddenly I understood. I could see all of it. I could see energies differently. I understood the false light matrix, or I even came up with that terminology. I don't know. I think other people use it, but before I even knew that other people were using it, that was what came to me. So I was plugged into this new knowledge. And so that's where a lot of this is. That's where this information that I'm sharing you is coming from, is as a direct result of that, and of that psychic attack. And then after that, I continued to study and also work with clients and make observations of things that were happening in my own spiritual life, and that brought me even more information about false light beings. Okay. So what I noticed as I was going through the actual psychic attack a year and a half ago, I started trying to tune in to see what was false light and what was actual light. Now, some of you watching this, I know, may have some level of intuitive or psychic abilities, and some of you may not. Well, we're all intuitive, but some of you may have honed your skills more than others. So don't worry if you can't relate to some of this, because I'm going to give tips that'll work for everybody. For me, what I began to realize was that for me, when I would use my clairvoyant abilities, my intuitive sight, I could tell that something was false light because it would look overly bright to the point where it would hurt my eyes. Whereas true light beings would be a beautiful light, but it wasn't so intense that it hurt my eyes. And in fact, the first thing that came into my mind, the very first time that I made that observation, that I had that experience where I saw false light through my clairvoyant vision, first thing that I thought of was, oh, it's like they're overcompensating. The false beings, false light beings, are overcompensating. So they're trying to be really bright light, like super duper bright, very bright and shiny. Okay. So if you are clairvoyant, Anna Maria says you are exactly correct, Maya. The false angel was extremely bright. Yeah. So a lot of times false light beings will be overly bright and shiny. Don't be afraid of light, though, because there are so many true light beings that are made of light, but it's that difference between, like, is it blindingly bright or is it normal light? Okay. So again, it's like they're trying to overcompensate. And how I see it clairvoyantly, some people may feel that light, like they might get a sense of it. Okay. Everybody tunes into their intuition differently. What I feel is that the false light beings, when they make themselves, now this is really important, when they make themselves so bright, that attracts all these unwitting spiritual followers who are not using their discernment because they don't know any better. And it's like moths to a light. They just come flocking in. And this is why the dark forces use this method of false light. It's because all the people out there who either don't know any better or they're just not very discerning, and there are a lot of people who are not very discerning. All these people who are they're really seeking the light, but they don't understand about this need for discernment. All of these people who are seeking the light, they end up flocking to all of these false light spiritual beings, as well as teachers who are working with false light, knowingly or unknowingly. And so that is a really big problem. Okay. And you might be asking yourself, why on earth would someone not be discerning about the energies that they're working with? Why would they not be discerning? Well, there's a really popular spiritual belief that causes people to not be very discerning, and it's the belief, and actually there were people saying it on my Facebook group the other day, so just to call that out a little bit, there's this belief that there are no good spirits or bad spirits. All is one. All is from God. There is nothing you need to protect yourself from. And notice I'm saying that sarcastically because it is a pile of crap. It sounds lovely. And I understand that people want to believe teachings that are lovely. Like, we all want more lovely things, more lovely beliefs. But it's just simply not true. What is true is that there are dark beings, there are beings of light, and there are beings all along the spectrum, that are a mixture. Okay? So use your discernment. And Nicole is saying, these details are so helpful. Yes, that's my hope. Nicole says, does it always feel negative as well, or just look unusually bright? Okay, so let's get into, I'll answer your question by getting into the next part. Okay, if it's a false light being, does it always feel negative? No, it does not always feel negative. Does it always look unusually bright? No, because these things are tricksters. So, there's other ways, other red flags. So it might not look unusually bright, but something might feel off to you. I've actually had a couple of instances of false light beings appearing to me. One time was during the really major psychic attack that I already referred to. And I saw what I at first thought was Archangel Michael. And I work with Archangel Michael a lot. So when I first saw this being, I said, oh, this is wonderful, But then a moment later, I said, something isn't right. So my little spidey sense was telling me something isn't right. And also because it was a clairvoyant experience that I was having, I was seeing this archangel. I was able to make the physical observation, the visual observation that something didn't look right. So when I saw what appeared to be Archangel Michael, he appeared differently than I normally see him. And he was knelt down on one knee, a very strong, muscular man, but his wings were hidden. Couldn't see his wings. And usually when I see the archangels, they will either, I'll see the physical, like human figure with the wings, or I will see them as light, as a different colored light, like Archangel Michael is blue. And not overly bright, but just normal bright. In this instance, I couldn't see the wings, and I thought, where are the wings? Something's not right. Now that's just, so the point is that it appeared differently than it normally does. The vision was different than normal. There was an experience that I had a couple of months ago that I found very upsetting. It really ticked me off. I had a couple weeks where I was very emotionally vulnerable because I was very worried about something, and I was praying very hard, and an angel appeared to me, or I thought that it was an angel, but I noticed that it looked different. It just didn't have that beautiful soft light. Instead, it looked like a human figure, but it had this like little bit, like a line of light around it. So again, it wasn't overly bright. It just looked different than how I normally would see an angel. Okay? So I focused so far on clairvoyant types of experiences, but not everybody on here is clairvoyant. So focus on if it doesn't feel right. So notice your feelings. If something doesn't feel right, notice that, okay? Also, another sign that you're dealing with a false light being is that either you will feel you'll feel either physically ill or emotionally upset, or you'll feel really, really good. Now that throws people. And this is one of the things that has really pissed people off. When I've taught this in the past in groups where some of the people in the group were actually working with false light beings, this is a tool that they use. And it's that if you're at some kind of a spiritual event or a private session or something, a false light spiritual being will fill the person or the people, the attendees, with feelings of ecstasy and bliss. And this is what I call spiritual anesthetic. And it's like when a leech or a tick latches onto you, it actually emits an anesthetic, so you can't even feel that it's there, and meanwhile it's sucking your blood. And the same is true with a false light being. It will hook in, and sometimes it will make you feel sick. The reason why it makes you feel sick is because suddenly your spiritual vibration drops, it tanks, and you feel sick, you feel woozy, dizzy, yucky all of a sudden because your vibration takes a nosedive. Or you feel wonderful all of a sudden, you feel filled with ecstasy and bliss. And how could that be a bad thing? Well, it's bad because an entity is in the process of hooking in and sucking your life force energy and also feeding you manipulating thoughts. Okay, so that's a lot. What I just talked about, that's pretty intense. So, you know, now stop and take stock here of what we've talked about. This is why when I very first started this group and was doing Facebook Live classes, I was not teaching stuff this intense at first because honestly, it just freaks people the F out, okay? It does. And I just trust that whoever's watching this was drawn to watch this because you saw the title and you were ready to hear about this. And anyone who wasn't ready, they found something else to do during this time. So if you're watching this, then I know you're ready to hear about this. So remember, if you don't feel well, okay, whoever says that they're leaving, you can watch the replay because there's a little bit more. See you later. Yeah, Nicole is saying we need the intensity. Real is helpful. Yeah, so what I've noticed in the New Age community, and I work a lot in the New Age community, what I've noticed though is this polarization to love and light, and anything that's not happy, positive, sugar-coated, just like they want to avoid all of it. But here's the thing, you have to know the truth of what's really going on. You really have to know. Anna Maria says, during my experience, I felt amazing and experienced abundance in so many things. I was so wrong back then. Oh my God, Anna Maria. If you were here, I would give you a big hug. I already liked you, but this girl, wow, I have the utmost respect for you getting through that and recognizing it. Mandy says, thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation so far. Have a good night. Bye, Mandy. Okay, we're kind of winding things down. I do have a couple of things. Okay, so some of the issues with false light in the spiritual community, it's very, very popular nowadays for people to channel. And that is bringing in spiritual messages from spiritual beings, channeling ascended beings, channeling messages from angels, channeling messages from alien beings, and so on. Now, I'm not saying that all of that is bad. If someone is channeling truly if they're channeling truly the being that they think they're channeling, bringing in some powerful spiritual information, then that can be a very good thing. I mean, receiving powerful information for our planet, for the human race, and for all beings, that's a good thing. The problem is that, I'm going to say something kind of controversial here, most of what is being channeled is either totally false light, or it's either partially or completely influenced by false light, by the false light agenda, by false light beings. Sorry to say that. So you can take that, you can take it or leave it, run that through your own personal filter. That's what I see. It's very hard to walk around having that knowledge, seeing people that I truly honor and respect, and there's so much channeling that's going on. They're bringing in all these energies that are not what they say they are, and it's kind of freaky to be observing that. So now that you have this knowledge, you'll be able to practice using your own discernment, and if something doesn't feel right, then you can always leave an event if it doesn't feel right, or you can end a session with someone. You're in charge of your own energy, so you don't have to prove that it's false light. How can you prove it anyway, right? So if it doesn't feel right to you, then just honor that. Ashley says, an ascended master of love won't berate you, as I learned. Yes. So one of the things that you can do if you're channeling, if you are someone who channels, or if you work with spirit guides, a lot of people will have spirit guides who are false light. And that's kind of scary too. So what I would recommend that you do with your spirit guides or any spiritual beings that you're working with is question them. Like when you meditate and focus on them, tell them that you need them to prove that they are truly of the light. Now, here's a little trick that I use. So if you send them the clear message that you need them to prove that they are truly of the light, if they get angry, if they get pissed at you, if you can feel, even if you're not clairvoyant or clairaudient, if you can just sense that they're pissed at you for expecting them to prove themselves, then guaranteed they are not beings of light. They are coming from ego and from darkness. However, if they are true beings of light and they are truly your guardian angels, for example, they are going to be happy that you are using discernment, and they're going to be more than happy to prove themselves to you, however that may be, through just patiently working with you, okay, or some other kinds of signs or messages. So that's another clue. With any guides, angels, ascended masters that you're working with or channeling, if they get angry when you question them, guaranteed they are false light. They are not who they say they are. And I have actually, when I came into this knowledge a year and a half ago, I was working with several spirit guides because of the work that I do. I do spiritual healing work and spiritual teaching. And so I had several spirit guides that I was working with that had come to me over the years. And there were a few, once I came into this knowledge, there were a few that I kicked out because I sat and meditated on each one. And there were a couple. I don't feel that they were demonic or like truly fully dark beings, but they were not of the light to the level that I expect. They were a little more ego driven, and it pissed off, it just like made their ego mad that I was questioning them at all. And I could also see there were two of my guides who, these are the two that I kicked out, that they weren't necessarily all evil, but they worked with what I call mixed energies, which means they would have no problem. Like one of my guides, I realized that during her physical life, her past physical life, she had no problems with putting hexes and curses on people. That was part of her magical practice. And that's not aligned with my personal code. Okay? So I kicked her out. I made her move out of my circle, and she was not allowed back in. Okay? So you can go through a discernment process with your guides. If they don't feel right to you, or you get a sense that they're not aligned with your personal code of ethics, you can have them leave. You can make them leave. You're in charge of your own energy. Okay? Nicole says, do you do that every single time or only upon first meeting them? Definitely upon the first time I meet them, but I'm constantly, because of what I know, I'm constantly on the lookout, right? But I have two guides who've been with me. My guardian angels, Isabel and Jacob, I've been seeing them for about 25 years now. And so I don't have to spend the time checking them every single time they show up, because I know what their energy feels like, and I know that they're true and authentic. So it depends, right? If they're fairly new, you might still have to keep your feelers out. Okay, so I talked about the issue, that one of the really common issues in spiritual communities right now, where it's very popular to channel false light beings, even though they don't realize they're false light beings. So why are so many false light beings coming through channelers? Why? Here's the reason why. It has to do with the dark agenda. The dark forces have an agenda, and part of their agenda is to bring in false information and mislead people from the real truth. So they want to encourage misinformation. They want to encourage suffering. and drama. They actually feed off of suffering energy on our planet. And so their intent is to channel false information. But here's the really tricky, mind-blowing thing, is that oftentimes information that's channeled has like a whole bunch of truth, lots and lots of truth, and then like little bits of misinformation, little tidbits woven in. And that's how it's done. Because obviously if it's like blatant false information, people are smart enough usually to say, well, that's just a pile of crap. I'm not going to believe that. But this stuff where this channeled information where most of it just sounds wonderful and it's very uplifting. It's like, dear ones, we love you so much, blah, blah, blah. And then there's all these little manipulations that are woven in. Information that's false and manipulating energies. So it can be kind of tricky. Very tricky, actually. Another one of the issues in the spiritual community with false light beings is it would involve the events where everyone's energy is opened wide open. Okay, so that would be like a sound healing concert. Now, I love sound healing. I love sound healing concerts, but I'm just using this as an example. That during a sound healing concert, let's say it's crystal bowls or gongs or chanting or something like that, everybody's energy is opened wide open. Everything is just, you feel expanded, you feel great. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're wide open and your defenses are down. And this is also when false light beings love to come in to spiritual events. It's a major target zone, actually. And I was telling one of my friends, it's actually safer energetically. This is a crazy thing to say. It's just crazy. It's horrible. It's safer energetically to like walk around Walmart or even a bar than it is to go, so energetically speaking, it's safer to walk around Walmart or just like some bar than it is to go to some of these spiritual events, because the spiritual events are so highly targeted by the dark forces and dark forces pretending to be light. It would just blow your mind if you could see what I can see. It would blow your mind. And Helene says, in those smaller entrance areas, the dark energies gain access and plant a seed. Yeah, that can happen. Definitely. Okay, I think I'm almost done. Okay, I'm going to finish with, and as I'm sharing this ending information, if you have any questions, now's the time, because I've gone over a little bit, and I've got about 5 more minutes, and then I got to go. Sherry says, I find that I can no longer go to psychic fairs because of all the dark energy that I see and feel. Yeah. Now, I want to just say to anybody out there who loves psychic fairs or who puts on psychic fairs, I love psychic fairs. I was at not a psychic fair, but an event over the weekend. I love events, not bashing them, but the reality, this is just the reality, that there are a lot of dark energies that are attracted to those kinds of events because they do the false light thing, and they come in and fool a lot of people who just don't know any better. Okay, so it's a major target zone. Now that you have this knowledge, you'll be able to be more aware when you go to these kinds of events, and you can still enjoy yourself, but you'll know if there's any red flags or something doesn't feel right. You can either you can leave, you can go to a different area, you can clear yourself, whatever you need to do. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them now. I see a couple questions coming through. And while I'm waiting for questions, these are the final tips that I have for you. Um, where were my tips? Here they are. Okay. Basic psychic protection tips. Make sure that you're grounded every day. Those times when you're not grounded, you're more vulnerable to false light entities coming in and trying to fool you. So stay grounded, okay? Stay connected with your own spirit and stay connected with the divine. Now, that sounds really simple, but that will involve you having some kind of a daily practice. And it really doesn't take that long. If you think that you're too busy, honestly, just take 3 minutes and just make sure that you're connected to earth, divine, and self, and that you're aware, and that you're like, okay, this is my energy, this is out there, this is me, and then go out into the world. Because so many of us are just like on autopilot and we're not really home. We've checked out. Okay, so make sure that you are home and aware. That's one of the most important things that you can do to help with this issue of false light energies. The other thing that I would say, and there's no easy way to develop discernment really with this, but just every day pray to see the truth in all things. Just pray to be able to see the truth. And then in doing so, gradually your ability to discern will improve. Okay? So let's see. We have a couple questions, I think. Sherry, I already read that comment. Zahira says, is it safer to listen than to healing, healing vibrations at home? Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to sound healing music, it's definitely safer to listen to it if you are in charge of the energy of your environment. So if you're at a spiritual event where there's a whole bunch of people, it's a lot harder to manage the energy because there's all those other people's energies around. So if you enjoy sound healing and you're super sensitive, then you could always enjoy it at home. Or if there are certain people, you might find that certain facilitators of sound healing literally resonate with you, and you're able to go to their events, and maybe some other sound healing facilitators, people who put on sound healing concerts, maybe you go and it doesn't feel right to you, then maybe you might consider not going to them anymore because it's not the right fit for you. Okay. So I was using sound healing as one example of a spiritual event where the energies can be a little precarious, a lot precarious actually. I love sound healing, but it really shifts your energy. I mean, if you're at a Crystal Bowl concert, how can that not shift your aura? You can't stop it, right? And it's raising your vibration, but it's also opening you up, and it's also calling in a lot of false light entities, unfortunately. Nicole says, if they're not all demonic and not from God's spirit, where are they from, or how are they differentiated from demons? Okay, I will try to answer that briefly. So we have a spectrum of spiritual beings, and we have, I'm going to say over here on this end, we have those that are pure dark. They have intentionally chosen to move completely away from the light, from love. They have totally malevolent intent. In this category, there are different kinds of entities. Demons are one type of entity that's in this pure dark category. And then we have those who are fully, over here on this end of the spectrum, we have those that are fully aligned with the light and God's will, unconditional love. Take your guardian angels, and the others in the angelic realm would be an example of some that are in this category. And then we have spiritual beings all along the spectrum that are like some mixture of good and bad, just like people on the planet. there's some that are like saints, and there are some that are like mass murderers and, doing horrific things on this end of the spectrum. And then there are like your everyday Joes that like are good, but they have some inner shadow, and they're a big mixture, right? The same is true on the spiritual realm. And all along the middle here, we have human beings who are now in spirit, who are in the middle zone, and there's all sorts of other spiritual beings as well, which would be a whole other, that would probably be a 5-hour class to go in all the different spiritual beings. But hopefully that helps to answer your question a little bit. Zahira says, CDs. Yep. Listen to CDs. Zahira, I know you're really sensitive to energies. So if you're at home relaxing, I do feel that you are pretty safe to listen to any sound healing CDs and let your energy open up and you can relax, because I know that you have already set up grids of protection around your home and around yourself, and you've already set up your boundaries. So that means you can just like relax in that energy. But if anything ever doesn't feel good, then don't do it. That's the rule. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Helene says, thank you so very much for doing this. Love you. You're welcome. Nicole says, I read some very good psychics claim that they have never seen a bad thing or avoid negative things. How is that even possible? Are they not being truthful or not incite fear? That goes along with the very common spiritual belief that negative entities do not exist. And I actually had a spiritual teacher, a colleague that I was talking with about a month or so ago, and she sat there and said, demons do not exist. Like, she was just proclaiming it. And I thought, well, what that means is that she's never had an encounter with one. And that's like, I was thinking about that today as I was doing my dishes, and I was like, that's like someone who's only lived in the Midwest, like who's only lived in the center of the United States, claiming the ocean does not exist because they've never seen the ocean. So therefore that must mean that it doesn't exist. So people are funny like that. Also, just gonna say what I think about this. If there was a person who was writing this, I do feel like they were under the influence of the false light agenda. That's just what I think. I think it's part of that misinformation coming through, because if people are told by spiritual teachers and psychics that negative energy doesn't exist, then no one protects themselves and they're all wide open targets. So that's perfect for the dark forces. The dark forces are like, hey, let's teach everybody that they don't need to protect themselves. Let's teach everybody that we don't exist. Because then we can just go in and do whatever we want. That's how that works. Nicole says, do our loved ones who have passed deal with these false light beings? That's a good question. I do think that they probably do to some extent, but it's my belief that when people pass on, they have their true loved ones around them, and their guardian angels, and all of their guardians are protecting them in their passage from this life onto the other side. And so for the most part, people are protected. Not everyone is, though, and there are people who encounter false light beings. I think that would be for another class, but I will just say that the ones who are more vulnerable to false light beings would be those who are in a vulnerable state to begin with. So those who are already involved in very negative lifestyle or have some other vulnerability. So let me think on that some more. I don't think that as soon as people pass on, there's suddenly all these false light beings. I do think that people are surrounded and protected as they're passing on. But yes, that was my rambling answer. I need to think about that some more. So my answer is yes and no. Most of the time they're protected. I do think that some do encounter false light beings. Yeah, yeah. And for you, for example, though, let's just pretend that at some point in the future, it's your time and you've passed on. Because you have this knowledge, you will have the discernment even when you pass on. You won't have this issue of being fooled by false light because you will have the discernment. Okay. All right, everybody. Oh my goodness. I would like you, if you're watching live or watching the replay, I'd like to ask you to take 3 deep breaths right now. And let's just ground. So right now, take 3 deep breaths. And as you're breathing, set the intention to release any feelings of fear or overwhelmment. And take another breath and connect with your spirit. And know that you are powerful, that you are sovereign, you are in charge of your energy. You are now even more powerful because you have this knowledge. And you're also free to share this with others if they, if you sense that they are open to it. You can share whatever amount that you might feel comfortable with. You now have this powerful knowledge that you can share. You are powerful and all-wise. Trust yourself. Trust your intuitive feelings. Trust your gut feelings. Trust what you know. Okay, everybody. Sending you all my love. Namaste. Until next time.